Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for my rational perspective on Liverpool 1, Chelsea 1. Thoughts on the game last night. I was working quite late on the game, writing pieces for Football London and also, of course, on a stream of Scott at Carefree Youth. You can go and watch that for sort of extended thoughts on the game. My feelings on the game and the result and the performance aren't that drastic from what I felt at full time. It still feels like a very, very valid point, and it's a big point, I think, for Chelsea in the context of what happened in the game, in the context of how I think we all felt, I'm sure the players and Tuchel felt at half-time, that minute of madness where Reece James was sent off. Liverpool got a penalty, they equalised, Anfield was very buoyant at that point, and of course N'Golo Kante went off injured at half-time, where we'd gone from a position of strength to one of weakness, and you were really fearing what could happen in that second half. And we would be heading into the international break feeling really down and just disappointed and probably angry as well with that decision to send Reece James off. So in that context, I think it further demonstrates the unity and quality within this squad, how good of a defensive unit Chelsea have, how strong they are at managing situations. There was so much old school Chelsea about that performance last night, and that's not to demean what Tuchel has done with the squad. That's not to say, oh, he's just copying older methods. But I couldn't help but look at the way Chelsea acted in the scuffle after Mohamed Salah's equaliser, the fact that these players, Lukaku getting straight into the action in terms of physical confrontation, they back each other. There's a sense that Chelsea enjoy annoying opponents in terms of rivals, big rivals, going to Anfield and frustrating the Anfield crowd. Felt very Mourinho-like. And as I say, you know, Tuchel is doing something incredible and you really want to focus in on what Tuchel's doing and appreciate it. But there were things that reminded me of old, brilliant Chelsea teams that competed for the Premier League title, where you go to a difficult away ground, the circumstances mean that you're kind of up against it, but you still come away feeling like you've been victorious, you know, even if it is a point. And psychologically, I think that's massive for the squad, the confidence they'll have getting through that very difficult and challenging moment before the break and also the second half. It just all builds, I think, the confidence and self-belief this squad has, that they've won a Champions League, they've won the Super Cup, they've got Romelu Lukaku, they've got one of the best managers and coaches tactically in world football, and there's a belief that we can do something more special in the Premier League this season. I think all of that in the context, despite it being so early on in the season, is really good. In terms of lineup, you know, Tuchel making one change to the team that started against Arsenal last week, N'Golo Kante coming back into the double six alongside Jorginho, not that surprising. I think the two biggest prizes, other than I think we all knew if Kante was fit, he was going to start alongside Jorginho. That's our strongest double six. I think the bigger questions were, is Ben Chilwell going to come back into the side for Marcos Alonso, despite Alonso's strong start to the season? You know, maybe there's that fear out wide with Mohamed Salah on that right going up against Alonso, you know, trying to make it so, you know, we aren't always getting the back three isolated against their front three. That was a concern. And also Timo Werner, the speed he could have in behind Liverpool's defence. Neither of those things happened, and I guess maybe that's a discussion point for another day in terms of both Chilwell and Werner and their importance to the team this year. But I do think that in that first half, there were some concerns, and Tuchel and I think Azpilicueta both pointed to this in their post-match interviews, the frustration of us in possession. I think we were quite sloppy, especially in that first half, giving the ball away in deeper positions, which is always a dangerous thing at Anfield. If you lose the ball in central areas, Liverpool can be so devastating of transitioning that ball from midfield into their front three and scoring a lot of goals. That's how they've really succeeded with their pressing under Jurgen Klopp. And really, I thought their press was really good last night. It was difficult for Chelsea, I think, at times to get out. You know, Chelsea are good at stretching the pitch, using our wing backs as that width to get out of pressing situations and trying to get up the pitch and feed the ball to our front three that then we can counter. That eventually happened, which I think shows you the strength that Chelsea can deal with a difficult opening 20-25 minutes and get through. And of course, Kai Havertz scoring the goal from a corner. Lovely to see us score from a set piece. Brilliant to see Kai Havertz score a brilliant header, looping header, such great technique. Alisson having absolutely no chance. It felt like that ball hung up in the air for a long time, slow motion. Kai with another big goal in a big game for Chelsea, and we hope that this year he's going to go to the next level. And that goal, despite it not leading to the 3 points and him being taken off at half time because of the red card, is once again, it's another moment for Kai that I think is only going to increase his confidence at Chelsea. And that front three for me, it's such a shame. I know there's a frustration from Chelsea fans because there were several moments in that first half following our opener where Chelsea could have scored more. Mount, Havertz, Lukaku, even Kante picking the wrong pass. There was a sense we could have played in Lukaku a bit more. Mason Mount had that chance where I believe that Robertson at least got a touch to clear it off the line. I mean, whether it was going in or not, I'm not sure. And there was that argument, a very strong argument that, Mount could have played in Kai Havertz there and it could have been 2-0. But I'm so encouraged by that front three. I don't think we lack any speed without Werner in that front three. I think Mount, Havertz, Lukaku, as they play more together, I think that they're only going to get more used to each other, and especially against maybe weaker opposition, they can be so devastating. Hopefully as well, in that first half, we struggled to get our wing-backs involved in our attacks as much as we'd want to, especially against Arsenal. Reece James had the comfort of Arsenal's right-hand side. Very different game for him up against Sadio Mane last night, especially on that left side with Andy Robertson as well. It's a completely different game. But that's something that I know that will obviously help us in attack, getting more numbers in. But the fact that Chelsea was still able to get that and to still feel like they had good numbers in attack when we were breaking forward, I think is really encouraging. We get to the minute of madness. It all stems from a Chelsea mistake. It all stems from Marcos Alonso and Edouard Mendy jumping for a ball that should have been Mendy's. I don't know if there was a lack of communication. Mendy is so assured as he was. I mean, I just want to pick up this stat in terms of his performance. Mendy made 6 saves against Liverpool today, the joint most by a goalkeeper this season and the most by a Chelsea keeper since the 18-19 season. Summarises how good Mendy's been, and he's so dominant in that area. But it was just a really unfortunate and awfully timed mistake that led the ball to drop out of Mendy's hands. I believe Mane keeps it alive, or Fabinho keeps it alive at the back post. Eventually it gets to a position where Jota and Mane, they're hitting balls towards goal, and then it leads to Reece James handball. Then of course we get the VAR intervention, and Anthony Taylor, who's not a friend of Chelsea supporters and Chelsea in general, walking over to the monitor, not having a look at the monitor. I mean, it was hilarious how short that gap was in terms of and time to look at that. He didn't look at a video. Most of the time when we get the VAR monitor in and an official is advised to go to that side monitor, he at least takes like 10-20 seconds. Anthony Taylor took one look at a still image, not even the full footage in context, turned around, gave a penalty and sent Reece James off. Now I know people have pointed to the laws in the game of it being, if Reece James' hand isn't there, it's a goal. I guess the wider argument, and I've kind of calmed down a bit because Chelsea got a point in the end, is the double jeopardy thing that I know they've taken away with goalkeepers, especially I believe in the Premier League, in terms of giving a penalty, straight red card, the double jeopardy. I understand the other point of view that if Reece James isn't there, if his hand isn't there, if it doesn't hit his hand, it goes in to the back of the net and Liverpool do equalise. I just felt it was Anthony Taylor again, a rush of blood moment in terms of him. You can question his officiating in a big game that's hurt Chelsea once again. I don't want to spend this whole review, as I haven't, speaking about Anthony Taylor, because I don't think he deserves it. I think the wider point is Chelsea took another setback from Anthony Taylor and made the most of it, and and I think really got out of a difficult situation, and you've got to be proud of the team. But it's just, once again, I mean, we've been over old ground with Anthony Taylor over a number of years in terms of my personal opinions on him as an official, the amount of mistakes he's made for 6 or 7 or 8 years now that have hurt Chelsea. We've been here before, so I feel like he's not going to change the decision now, so there's no point keep on talking about it. But I think the way Chelsea dealt with that situation, Tuchel tactically really limiting the space, bringing on Thiago Silva for Kai Havertz. You still had Christensen as that middle defender. Thiago Silva made more blocks than the entire Chelsea team combined, having come on at halftime. And that's really impressive for Thiago because he hasn't played any football, I don't believe, so far for Chelsea, especially in any of the competitive games. So back to his levels. But I do want to pick out Andreas Christensen before I finish this review, because he was absolutely wonderful. I've had criticisms and doubts about Christensen in recent years in terms of could he make it at Chelsea, but in the last 6-7 months, basically since Tuchel's arrived, he is now in the form of his career. He is so dominant, much more mature, and what I love about Christensen is he's so much more assertive. I feel like he is aggressive now. He takes control of situations, maybe has a little bit more license because it's in a position that favours him, but he has no fear, I think, at times of being dragged out wide a little bit if he has to and cover space, if the opportunity is there for an opposing team to maybe exploit space that maybe one of our other centre-backs has left behind. everything about Christensen's game, aerially, I think on the floor, obviously, we know he's elegant on the ball, his decision-making, being in the right place at the right time, things that I think have always been a good part of Christensen's game. But I think as an all-round centre-back now, he's become so much more mature. I think it's a combination of having the backing of the first team head coach to play in, week out, and get that experience around Rudiger and Dave, especially, who he's played with so frequently now, being in a system that suits him, a confident team, winning the Champions League, playing in that Champions League final, playing well for Denmark and being a key part of his nation at the Euros. Really good tournament for him there. And this start to the season, he is a guaranteed starter at the moment. And I just want to give all the praise to Christensen, because I know maybe because he's more of an introverted figure, I don't always think he gets the credit he deserves. He's not a very loud figure on the pitch, but he has probably proved that just because you aren't shouting all the time doesn't mean you can't be a big presence in defence. And that's absolutely what Christensen has been for Chelsea. So I think he deserves credit, and continues a great start and a great few months for him. But the thing I want to end on is I think that I wrote about this as well for Football London. I'll leave in a link below. Thomas Tuchel's opening press conference, which I still think you should go and rewatch, because it was so important, I think, and I think it will be important when we look back at Thomas Tuchel's reign at Chelsea, of sort of setting out what he was going to do here. And he's doing special things at the moment, but one of the promises he made, and I think the vows he made, was I want to make Chelsea a team that no one wants to play against. That was kind of the gist of what he was saying. I believe he said that after the first game. And this was more proof of it. We didn't win the game, and I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if Reece James didn't get that red card, because my personal belief, and I know it's very easy to say this, and it is coming from a place of bias, I think Chelsea would have scored more goals, and I think we may have won that game in the second half. I think that the final pass may have been there after the half-time interval if we had 11 players, because I just think the space was there for Chelsea to exploit, especially if it was still 1-0 and Liverpool were pressing up a little bit more. I think Chelsea could have really hurt Liverpool in that second half. Unfortunately, it wasn't there, but the fact Chelsea are now a team that you don't want to play against, the way defensively we frustrated Liverpool, even with 10 men, despite a good flurry for them at both starts of each half, we frustrated them to a point of exhaustion. It looked like Liverpool ran out of ideas in the end, and that's down to Tuchel. And it's not just about being a team no one wants to play against because we score goals. It's also the fact that we limit your best attackers. And with 10 men, there's so much belief, there's so much confidence, and we go into the international break feeling really strong, coming away from a game that 1-1 for me was always a good result this early on in the season. Give me your thoughts, give me your man of the match. My man of the match is obviously going to be Andreas Christensen, but there were so many good performers. Mateo Kovacic, I thought, was absolutely brilliant coming off the bench, especially losing N'Golo Kante, who's like 2 players on the pitch. And I guess we could speak more about Kante's fitness issues because they are a bit of a concern. But I thought Kovacic, who's had a good start to the season, really impacted the game of just being someone to relieve the pressure, get through tight spaces, all the things that he's always excelled at. Maybe because Chelsea were a little bit more defensive, he wasn't really required to create as much, find that final ball to someone in the final third. It was more a case of him relieving pressure and getting for a press, which he's always been really good at. And I think Kovacic deserves praise in a really difficult situation. But across the team, man, we could go through everyone, especially in that second half, really put in a good shift when things were difficult and got a valued point that I think everyone is proud about from a Chelsea perspective. So those are my thoughts on the game. Let me know yours in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.